I figured a wonderful way to end this year and to start off our new year are some reminders. Things that we've already talked about before, things that maybe we've forgotten about, maybe things that we weren't clear about. I feel that this is a perfect time to remind us, to put us back on the path, remind us of our truest intentions, to bring us greater clarity, to bring us back on the path, and to bring us closer to God. And so let's sit and listen like we're hearing it for the first time and see if we can get something new from it. Embodying divine guidance. What a fun topic. It sounds very woo-woo. It sounds very spiritual and new agey. But fortunately for us, right, through Divine Connection International with Guruji, with myself, we're able to implement spiritual truths into real empirical scientific evidence. We're able to take the principles and fundamentals of nature and apply them scientifically so we can cipher out delusion from reality. That's what we've done with these 6,000 science experiments. In life sciences, material science, and these clinical trials we've done is to determine what principles, what fundamentals of nature, of reality actually are inherent to God and to consciousness, and what is simply a delusion, a process that we've tricked ourselves into believing there's an outcome, believing that we're doing something beneficial for our lives, but in reality, it's pulling us away from the truth. It's distracting us. It's further embedding us into more and more delusion. Because if there's anything we know, it's the ability of our psychologies. It's the ability of the mind to persuade us that anything is good for us or anything is bad for us, whether that's true or not. Our minds are capable of deluding us about anything and for anything. We can easily delude ourselves into going out and, going on a shopping spree, into, criticizing or judging someone, into maybe allowing someone to take advantage of you just one more time. But when you look at plants, animals, trees, bacteria, viruses, fungi, when you look at non-living materials, metals, ceramics, polymers, and chemicals, when you're doing double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trials, what are you taking away from that experience? You're taking away psychology. You're taking away the mind. You're taking away beliefs, thoughts, values, delusions, and you are left with something that is eternal, something that is ever present, that we can truly connect to, something that is the very foundation of our lives and our existence. And that is what we need to embody. That is what we need to connect to, whatever's left. Through enlightened consciousness, when you have an enlightened being who's able to transmit, right, this divine energy, this light to something else, whether it be an animal, plant, a tree, non-living material, or a person, and you're able to measure the outcome, empirically. You know that that thing is real. If God is real, if consciousness is real, then it has an outcome in our lives. There is a practical, measurable outcome. The problem is with New Age spiritualities, we deny ourselves the outcome. We are so intoxicated by the process. We are so process oriented and so focused on you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do everything right. You don't have to achieve or accomplish anything. You don't have to have success or prosperity as long as you have God. And we miss the fact that God's very nature, God's presence in our lives is prosperity. God is good health and quality of life. God is peace and happiness. God is harmonious relationships with other people. God is peace. God is freedom. If there's anything God is freedom. And when we are trapped in our own desires, when we are trapped in our own delusions or even our own values, when we are trapped in struggle, when we are trapped in not being able to accomplish whatever we need to do in life, even if it's just filing tax returns, when we feel stuck, do we feel free? In these states of being, we almost feel like there's less of God in those moments than when we are accomplishing things and doing more and achieving more, when we are taking our strength and applying it to our lives and being able to produce something worthwhile. We feel like there's more freedom, ironically, in applying more discipline and taking initiative and using more of our efforts to achieve outcomes. The freedom that results as an after effect of that is much more free than not doing it at all. Even psychology says that people who apply more discipline and effort into their lives, who are more disciplined, are happier people. You would probably think the contrary, that maybe a more disciplined life means more strictness, more regulation over what you are able to do, your freedom of choice, your liberty to live whatever you want to be and do whatever you want to do. But discipline and self-effort in actuality is a way of tailoring our lives it's weeding out the delusions, the confusion. It's taking strength, the strength of spirit, of consciousness itself, and taking it and building that muscle, actually utilizing that strength to overcome challenges. The more we take that strength from spirit to overcome a challenge in our lives, the more we manifest that spirit into our reality. The more we experience higher consciousness, the more we experience God. Through all of our science experiments, what we've seen, and you see this very evidently in plants and trees, is that when plants and trees are connected to God, to higher states of consciousness, we can just say there's more of that presence of God there. There's more of that divine embodiment. So when we're able to transmit this divine energy and raise the consciousness of plants and trees, what happens? More consciousness when we see the outcome. We see 500% greater yield. We see 600% greater immunity, right? We see 100% increase in shelf life. We see a greater quantity and quality in terms of the amount of nutrients that are available, even for human consumption. We see cancerous cells turned into non-cancerous cells. We've seen the death of cancer cells and the viability of healthy cells. We see drug-resistant bacteria finally respond to drugs. We see the creation of new materials and new species on this planet. We see the structure and energy within the atom, between atoms, everything change to create an entirely new material, an entirely new atom on this planet. And as a result, that material is now more beneficial to us and to the world. There is an inherent strength and inherent spiritual immune system that is built within all of these things the moment consciousness is raised. You no longer need to apply weedicide or fungicide or chemical fertilizers, even organic ones. Just add water. It's like those infomercials, just add water. I mean, show the plants and trees for a minute. Just remind yourself, this is consciousness. This is what the grace of God wants. Can we see the before, the unblessed, not the before, the unblessed and the blessed? One of them, every chemical, every fertilizer, every treatment, weedicide, fungicide, the other one, nothing. You can't produce any crop nowadays without the use of these things, without fumigating, without applying a chemical fertilizer, because the nutrients in the soil, the bacterial composition is so depleted. I mean, it's impossible to produce something like this without adding a chemical, without fumigating, without applying a pesticide anymore. It's impossible. And here, we're doing exactly none of that. There is no process behind it. This is simply more consciousness, and that's it. Lost my screen for a moment. I don't exist. It's like that example of the iron bar and the magnetic iron bar. When you have a normal iron bar, all the atoms within that bar that compose the totality of that iron bar, they're all chaotic. They're everywhere. They are undisciplined. The efficiency and the capabilities of that iron bar are limited. And when that iron bar becomes a magnetic iron bar, the difference we see is these atoms are now all in perfect alignment. They are disciplined. And that discipline allows a space between these disciplined atoms. And it's through that space where this magnetic energy comes through. This iron bar is able to embody this magnetic energy and utilize it. It naturally flows through it. The iron bar doesn't need to do anything different. It doesn't need to become anything different. It doesn't need to sit in meditation. It doesn't need to chant a mantra. For a material, the character of a material are those inbuilt atoms. So when the characters are disciplined, the iron bar is now able to harness magnetic energy, electromagnetic energy that already exists within its environment. It's not creating or generating more electromagnetic energy. It is harnessing electromagnetic energy that already exists there. And as a result, it's able to use that magnetic energy and apply it to other materials. It can even make other iron bars magnetic just by its presence. That is enlightened consciousness. When we say following the will of God, that means following the principles and fundamentals that are inherent to consciousness itself. When we discipline our lives and our characters in such a way that it lines up just like that iron bar, then naturally, what is naturally emitted, what naturally comes through us and transforms us, is that pure consciousness of God, of divinity. It's natural. Everybody says enlightenment is natural, and that is 100% true. It is not an abnormal state of being. It is simply you take away all the modifications of life, and what's left in that disciplined state of being when your will, your consciousness is suffused with the consciousness of divine, of God, when you and that light are no different from each other, then what comes through is natural. There's no harnessing or thinking or focusing your energy, doing Reiki and Tai Chi and Qigong and acupuncture, trying to align your chakras and do all these rituals and dogmas and practices. It is natural. God didn't create acupuncture, Tai Chi, and Qigong. God created awareness. It's the human mind that created these rituals and dogmas to try and bring us back to that pure awareness. They are not necessary. It's like the ritual, the practice itself, it's meant to point to something. It's meant to direct our awareness to something, but in and of itself, it has no power behind it. The power is the consciousness behind it. It's like we get confused with the finger pointing at the moon. We start to look at the finger instead of the moon. So much so we forget about the moon entirely. And we start thinking, okay, my finger has to be exactly like this, and then the moon will appear. So the problem is where we are now. Sometimes our lives and our minds are so chaotic. They are so out of whack, out of balance, that we can't feel that divine presence that is there guiding us already. That is inherent to us. It's our natural blueprint. And we can't connect to it. We don't even know it's there. A lot of people don't. Our scientific research is an invaluable database for anybody who wants to understand or believe that consciousness is real, because it's beyond belief. This is factual empirical evidence that consciousness is real, and it is self-effulgent. Now, self-effulgent is a very interesting term, and I'm not sure if many people know what that means, but self-effulgent, consciousness doesn't need anything outside of itself to exist, to be. Consciousness takes care of itself. It sustains itself. It wants nothing outside of itself. So, pure consciousness, when we're talking about a state of self effulgence, it is a state of independence. It is a state of complete happiness. There's no desire, there's no lack, there's no need or want. There's no attachment. When we have something that is so complete, it doesn't need, or nothing else even exists outside of it, what is there to have a need or a want for anything else? You see in those plants, they are taken care of. They are prosperous. They are growing. They are fruitful. simply through that grace of consciousness. And that's it. So, happiness, prosperity, peace, these are things that are natural to consciousness itself. They are inherent to divine. And any time that we are not experiencing these realities in our lives, we must know that one thing is true and one thing only. We are not connected to divine. We are not connected to what's real. We are in a state of delusion. We're not seeing life correctly. We are focusing on the wrong things. We are attached to things. There's some part of us that is confused about what the reality of life is, about our true nature as human beings, about what really sustains us and takes care of us, about what is inherent in every moment, what sits with us and cries with us and loves us in every moment. We get confused and we think it's our mother or our friend or our brother or sister. And we forget all about God. People are tricky. People are unstable. They change all the time. But God doesn't change. To change means that you are imperfect, that there's something to change into. Means you're incomplete, you're transient. There's something else to do, to become. But perfection doesn't change. It doesn't become something other than what it is. So the things that are eternal, that stay, that's real. So the point of connecting to this divine presence is connecting to that eternal reality of God. What's eternal in each moment? If we look at what's eternal to us, we have to know it's not our bodies, because we were born into our bodies, and when we die, our bodies stay here. They change forms. Our bodies grow and evolve, decay, mature, die. So do our minds. Even our thoughts change all the time, depending on our moods, our states of mind, our confusions, our delusions. Our thoughts change constantly. Some days we have good thoughts, some days we have bad thoughts. Our emotions definitely change. Ask any woman. No. Values change, beliefs change. So if we're holding on to a value or a belief, even if it's a very good one, those are higher delusions, harder delusions to let go of, because it's easier to let go of an attachment to a car or a house or even your looks. It's a lot harder to let go of an attachment to a way of being and believing and seeing life. That's the hardest attachment to let go of out of all. So if all these things, their natures are all transient, then what stays? No matter all of these things that change with us as we live our lives, right? Even our homes, our families, all these things start to change. People come and go. Everything changes, everything moves along. What doesn't change? That's who we are. What stays the same always? And we can say the thing that stays the same ultimately is our awareness. Awareness and consciousness are the same. When there's more consciousness, there's more awareness. Consciousness supersedes thought and feeling and emotion. Awareness exists before a thought happens. Our thoughts pass through our awareness, but our thoughts are not awareness themselves. Even our emotions happen within our awareness. Some people have experienced this where they're living an emotion, then suddenly it's like they get put on pause for a moment, and then they're a witness to their emotion. And it almost just suddenly going into that awareness behind the emotion itself, the awareness that sits behind everything. It's like they're able to disconnect from the emotion and stop the emotion itself, or just look at themselves almost like a third party, right? And think, what the hell? What's happening? Who is this person? So, this awareness, if that is consciousness, if we know that consciousness is inherent to us because we have this awareness, we know we have consciousness because we know we have awareness. So, if this is natural to us, this awareness, if everybody has this, everybody might have different thoughts or beliefs or values or emotions, but everybody, no matter what, always has awareness. That is universal to all things. Everything has different varying degrees of awareness, but awareness is there. So the problem is not embodying divine. We've already embodied divine. Awareness is already there. It's getting rid of all the crap, everything else that prevents this awareness from flowing freely into our lives. It's like you have a river. You put a bunch of blocks in the river, eventually it creates a dam and it prevents that flow from that river. So on the other side, there's no outcome. There's no water coming out. There's no water to nourish the plants and the trees. There's no water, to provide to all of the life on the other side of that blockade that we've created. The water's there. You don't have to create the water or make the water. You have to remove the blockade. And a lot of people misunderstand what that really means. There's this concept in spirituality that desire impedes spiritual growth. And that as a result, we must control our desires. And to anybody who really believes they can control their desires, they must be very unfortunate. I don't think if you ever know that when you try and control life, life starts to control you. When you put too much time and attention and focus on something, when it becomes your world, you become fixated on it. It becomes more and more your reality than whatever you're trying to control. It's like the people who are really invested in spirituality and really want God with all of their beings. They really want to grow. They really want to do the best. They get so stuck in the process. That's exactly what it is. They get so fixated on wanting to get that, that they get stuck in the process of getting it because that is their new reality. That's what they've become attached to, is the process of becoming that. Desire is natural to life. You cannot have life without desire. Desire gets you out of bed. Desire, tells you to make food so you can eat. Desire puts clothes on your body. Desire does a lot of things for you. So desire is not inherently bad. Desire has a function and a purpose. The only thing is the fixation of our minds, what our awareness is fixated upon, what we start to identify with in terms of our values and our beliefs and what we feel is important to us. So it's not desire that traps us, it's attachment. And attachment, the sole cause of attachment, the sole source of attachment, just comes from a lower state of awareness, a lower state of consciousness, being confused and unclear about the true reality of divine and our lives, the essence of who we are. If you were aware, if you could feel this divine presence, desires would vanish on their own. You wouldn't have to try and control your desires. The desires, your attachments, would just naturally dissolve through this divine presence by itself, naturally. We just have to align ourselves with these divine principles and fundamentals of our lives. Now, the question is, what are these divine principles and fundamentals? Well, these principles and fundamentals, one word that is commonly used in Hinduism and Buddhism is this word Dharma. And what Dharma means is that there is a supreme, absolute reality, an undifferentiated reality that exists beyond us and as a part of us. But all of us exist because of that. We exist because of the absolute. That there is a way that life is, whether we like it or not. There are laws, there are principles, there are fundamentals that are inherent to this supreme reality. That when we follow them, when we discipline ourselves and are able to follow them to the best of our capabilities, our awareness increases, our consciousness increases. We're able to harness through this discipline, harness more of this divine energy into our lives. We're able to embody more of the divine, to create, to go before us and prepare the way. This divine energy takes care of us. It'll go forth and do whatever is needed, necessitated for your happiness and for your prosperity. We get fixated on what we think happiness and prosperity is for us, on what we want to accomplish, what we think will make us happy. And we forget that the sole inherent character of consciousness is happiness. So it's a problem with identity, of focus and fixation. We've lost the plot. We've forgotten. And society, the world we live in, it doesn't help us remember. Because for so long, science has not been able to measure empirically the nature or the existence of consciousness. That is why the work of Divine Connection International, it's pioneering a new paradigm of livelihood, of humanity, of the human condition, of science and technology and medicine, of food, nutrition, a new scientific paradigm of understanding the nature of consciousness, because for the first time, we have been able to apply science to consciousness and measure the outcome. It has never been done before, never till this day. And as a result, we can see for ourselves not just what we believe, not because of the books we read or the texts or the religion or the spiritual practices we follow, taking people at their word or trusting something, but we can see empirically what science points to about the nature of consciousness. If consciousness is the one thing that is universal and it connects all of us, then why hasn't science been able to measure it till today? On the contrary, science should be able to measure it. It should be able to see outcome in a scientific laboratory using all the most sophisticated technologies available without the need for spiritual interpretation. And we've seen exactly that. That is why our research is so valuable. It is invaluable. Because our organization is single handedly providing a new era for humanity where we can understand that consciousness is the nature of our reality, that divine exists, that God exists, and that this pure consciousness is our source of happiness and prosperity and well being. When we deny this vital aspect of our lives, we see that the avenues that we go in to try and replicate happiness and prosperity and goodness in life, they eventually fail us. We see symptoms of a systemic problem. And these symptoms are our poor quality food, our toxic environment, our mental health crisis. In the next 60 years, we might not be able to provide food for all the 8 billion people that lives on this planet. Why? Because we no longer have the technology or the ways to produce food, agriculture, crops without completely destroying our environment as a result. We are losing our ability to provide for 8 billion people. But consciousness, this self-effulgent nature, can do that for us. It can take care of us. We've come to a point where it's not even a choice. It's not even, I feel like I'm going to, start going the spiritual path in my life. No, it's now vital if we want to live a better quality of life, that we can no longer ignore this part of our lives. It is vital and essential for our continued livelihood to improve the human condition, to improve our parameters and our quality of life. If we want to do any of that, it is vital. It's no longer a choice. I mean, it never has been a choice, but now it's more vital than ever. That if we continue to ignore this vital part of our nature, of our existence, we will no longer be able to live. Human beings are capable of withstanding huge turmoil and a huge amount of hardship. That's one of the beauties of consciousness, is its ability to withstand anything. We see that inherently with people is this ability to withstand hardship. But why do we have to? Well, we've come past the point of withstanding hardship, and we've come to the point where it's no longer viable for human life to continue this direction. We've seen for the first time ever in a first world country, our life expectancy drop. Why? Because people are resorting to drugs and suicide, the younger generation. Because happiness is not here. And we've misunderstood the true source of happiness in our lives. When we think of divine guidance, we often think of intuition. Because what is intuition? There is something that we experience time and time, and it's something that defies logic, it defies reasoning, it defies intelligence, even. It's just something that we feel a knowingness that something may happen or that we need to do something. We are divinely guided in those moments, whether we know it's God or not. We just have this sudden moment in which we are more present in our awareness. And through that presence, we're able to connect with that divine presence. And that divine presence is guiding us in that moment. We often think intuition is like a moment of spiritual awakening, when in reality, if you look at the people who are successful, who are prosperous, right, the people who are able to achieve and do a lot in their lives, if you actually look into their character, they rely on intuition a lot. They are inherently connected to their intuition. And this intuition is inbuilt, right? It's part of that inherent character of consciousness. That consciousness, that self effulgence, it knows everything. It's omnipresent and omniscient. It knows whatever needs to happen, again, for your greatest good, for your greatest happiness, and for your greatest growth. It takes care of you, so it knows everything that needs to happen. If there's danger in the path, it's going to tell you to turn a new way, to turn a new leaf, to do something different, to avoid going down that alleyway. You might not know why, you just have a sudden feeling, a prickly feeling, I should not go down that way. I needed to get off this plane. But so many people misunderstand what intuition really is, and they think it has to do with desire. It's because of that confused state of mind. Coming from a lower place in consciousness, we are operated more by our desires and delusions than we are by this pure consciousness, by our inherent divinity. And so, as a result, because of our attachments and fixations and our inability to identify with spirit, and our lack of discipline in following those divine principles and fundamentals, which naturally purge our being. When we follow the divine principles and fundamentals, they bring us clarity, right? It's that discipline that gives that space for this energy to work through us. It brings us greater clarity and mental acuity. It gives us greater comprehension. It gives us a greater ability of discrimination to understand what's good, what's bad, what to do, what not to do. How am I being tricked? How am I tricking myself? More power, more will, more energy to do and achieve whatever you need to do. All of these are inherent to higher states of consciousness. But when we're operating from a lower place in consciousness, our mind controls us, our thoughts. We are slaves to our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own emotions. So we start to think that we're listening to our intuition, we're listening to divine guiding us, when in reality, we are just so passionately attached to whatever we want in our lives from the level of desire, right? That we interpret divine guidance in accordance with our own values and our own desires, that it's no longer intuition, but rather we are just trying to accomplish whatever we want to do. When we're always operating from a place of confusion and desire, the outcome won't be there. The outcome will either lead to more chaos, more delusion, more desire, maybe ADD, ADHD, lack of clarity and direction in life, lack of peace, frustration. There's also this concept of satiety. Happiness, right? The nature of pure consciousness, if it's self-effulgent, it doesn't reach satiety. Meaning, if things are operated on the level of desire and attachment, say you really want a piece of chocolate cake, right? The excitement itself, it's pulling you, it's everything, every part of your being, your own psychology saying, I deserve the chocolate cake. I really want the chocolate cake. Everything is trying to justify the reason why you should have the chocolate cake. You're saying, my intuition says I got to have this chocolate cake because every part of me is on fire for this chocolate cake. I'm getting this rush of energy. This rush must be from God. It's surely not my adrenaline because I'm so passionately involved with this chocolate cake. But what happens when you eat the chocolate cake? Right? In the moment you're having it, it's very enjoyable. But after a while, the enjoyment starts to deplete. When you're full and you've had a whole slice of chocolate cake or even maybe a whole cake, after a while, you can't continue having that cake and still enjoying it at the same level you were before. The excitement fades. That's how you know that you are operating at the level of your brain and body and not at the level of spirit, because happiness doesn't fade. It doesn't fade with a sense of satiety to it. Excitement does. And when we no longer have this excitement or this purpose or this movement within our being that is moving us and propelling us to the next purpose or the next moment in our lives, right? Then suddenly we reach a state of boredom and complacency. And this complacency is actually even worse than suffering itself. And so, as a result, because of this numbness and complacency we feel in life, we want to start to feel something again. So we move on to the next desire. And we think we're following our happiness. We think we're following our life purpose. We think we're following what God wants us to do. And let's say the desire never came to fruition. We never got the chocolate cake. What's going to happen then? You're going to be miserable. Without that chocolate cake, you're going to be miserable. You're going to suffer. The disappointment alone is suffering. Intuition, whether you get the thing that you desire or not, will never leave you in a state of mind or a state of existence that perpetuates suffering. So even if you don't get the thing that you think you want, the peace is still there, the happiness is still there, because it's not coming from the world. It's not coming from your thoughts or your beliefs or your desires. It's coming from that purity in consciousness, from your innocence. This is where it becomes so imperative to have an enlightened teacher in your life. Because when you're in such a state of confusion and delusion, it's almost impossible for you to see the light, for you to see the correct path. When you are so confused, you almost don't know what the right choice to make is. And the beauty of this divine energy that comes from enlightened consciousness is that it takes all the glue, your personality, your identities, your values, your beliefs, the glue of everything that you are, and it starts to dissolve it altogether. And through this moment of dissolution, through this grace, as your consciousness raises, it's like you see the sun behind the clouds for a moment. You suddenly start to feel something there. Maybe it starts off as pain, emotional trauma, whatever it is, but it's a purging. You are feeling whatever your spirit has been feeling through its own inhibited state of being, when it's not been able to express itself properly. It's not you crying from suffering, it's your spirit crying because it's not able to shine in this world. Imagine you have like a diamond, and that this diamond is that pure awareness. It is this divine presence within you, your own nature. And because of your experiences in life, because of the way you've led your life, right? Your consciousness is a reflection of the way you have lived your life, the choices you've made, the thoughts, the emotions you've held, the way you've engaged with life, what you've taken responsibility for. All these things are reflected as your consciousness. The sum total of you. So this divine light, this divine energy, it starts to melt away. This sludge or this ice that prevents you from feeling this divine presence, because it's our choices and our direction, the way we lead our lives, that either takes us further away or closer to this divine presence. If we've experienced a lot of trauma, if we've become very attached to ways of living, if we've led a life of ignorance and made choices in alignment with that ignorance, our experiences create these layers around this divine presence that inhibits us from feeling it. And you'll see the people who are operating from a lower level of consciousness, which simply means you feel less of this divine presence. You're less aware of this existence. So these people are seekers of excitement. They are bingers. They are people who try to suppress their pain. They are people who live in a very chaotic state of mind and can never find peace no matter where they go, or what they do in their lives. So they're always trying to find the new source of stimulation, the new source of something to prevent them from feeling this numbness. And their actions are always led with the premise of confusion. So their actions themselves perpetuate their suffering. When you begin to feel this divine presence, when you go through a transformation in consciousness, when your consciousness is elevated, there's something that happens to you where you suddenly become very sensitive and you start to feel more. You feel more in life. You feel more of what comes from other people. You feel more of what's within you. You are far more connected to life because consciousness, that's the inherent reality of life. You are more connected to consciousness from that higher state in consciousness. You are more connected to the absolute. You are more connected as well to what's not true, to falsehood. You can discriminate and see the difference between the two because you feel the impact it has on your life, the impressions, that ways of being and interactions with others, the ways of other people, how they influence your state of being and your consciousness, your energy levels. You're more sensitive to drops in consciousness and moments in which your consciousness is uplifted. A lot of people who are operating from a lower level of consciousness, who are operating from a lower level of awareness, they're synonymous, they're the same. So, this lack of awareness, you don't notice the drops that you feel or that occurs to you in consciousness. You don't recognize or feel the drops that happen when you choose a moment to judge somebody or yell at somebody who doesn't deserve it, or you lie and cheat and manipulate and betray. You don't feel the drops or the impact that has on your consciousness. You're not aware of it. You don't even know what you're doing is wrong sometimes. Not all the time. A lot of the time, I think people do know what they're doing is wrong. But sometimes they are just confused and they don't know the choices they're making and the way that they are living their lives are actually having a dramatic effect on their energy levels, on their levels of consciousness. So, this divine energy from these enlightened beings, they kind of make this sludge, this ice around the diamond fall away so you can feel that divine presence again. And this divine presence, when right, this structure of awareness, this structure is dissolved, the glue of your existence, of your identity starts to dissolve little by little. You start to see peaks of this pure consciousness appear into your life. You start to see synchronicities. You start to see moments of grace. You start to witness the beauty. the infinite shining facets all around you. And then maybe you make a mistake in your life. You do something that maybe wasn't in alignment with the Dharma. Maybe it hurts someone. And then suddenly you feel that drop. Life is less beautiful. You're less happy than you were before. Suddenly you have a lot more thoughts in your head. You're more disturbed than you were before. And you might not associate the two immediately because oftentimes this drop happens over a period. You don't notice the shift in your awareness until a couple of days later. Similarly, there's certain choices and actions we make in our life where we feel uplifted. We feel greater stillness within us. We feel greater peace. We're able to sit with ourselves for a longer and extended period of time without feeling the need to move and run around and do something, turn on the TV, engage in conversation. You can suddenly sit still with yourself and be at peace with that, with who you are. From a lower state of consciousness, you are more present in your life. You are more aware of your own presence in your life. And from a higher place in consciousness, you are more aware of the beauty of life. You are more aware of what extends beyond your own personality and your own identity. You start to witness the beauty and the grace from others. You start to see the beauty in nature. You start thinking of what other people need, what would make others happy. And not from a place of what can I do to make others happy, but just to see that happiness, to feel that happiness from another person, that joy, to witness that joy on someone's face. You are less involved in your life. You are more involved in the absolute, in that pure, self effulgent consciousness. And then on top of that, to have an enlightened teacher means that they can explain, even in moments when you don't feel the truth, when you don't feel that Dharma, when you don't know what the divine principles and fundamentals are. You have someone who's gone before you and already done the work, who's been on the path, who's come to the other side of it, who's free. And sometimes just following the motions with trust in your heart awakens a part of your being, and you start to feel that truth for yourself. It is very difficult to do without an enlightened teacher. So, to embody this divine presence, this divine guidance, we need to, first of all, understand and recognize ourselves as consciousness. We need to understand that it is a vital, essential part of our lives. We can't be separated from it. It is our essence. It is the very essence that substantiates and programs our realities. It is the very fiber of our beings. And then once we understand this consciousness as being this vital part of our beings, then we have to find out the ways in which consciousness supports itself. What is the inherent character and nature of this consciousness? And how does that relate to how we conduct and lead our lives? Are we following the principles and fundamentals that bring more awareness, more energy, more vitality, more peace into our lives, that brings more happiness into our lives? Then we are following this Dharma, this absolute truth, these divine principles and fundamentals. When we lead our roles in life perfectly, when we take responsibility, a lot of people don't like the idea that to be on a spiritual path means you have to be perfect as you can be. There's this huge stigma against doing a good job for some reason with the spiritually minded people. But if we understand the nature of consciousness is perfection, then why would we not want to embody that as much as possible? Why would we not want to embody that perfection? By conducting our lives as perfectly as possible. You are drawing strength from consciousness itself. You are drawing something that is fundamentally inherent. It reminds you of your nature when you fulfill your role in life perfectly, when you bring all of your focus and attention to your task at hand, when you pull all of your attention and drive it forward with courage, with strength, right? Everything that comes to us in life is a result of our own consciousness wanting to work things out for us. Every time we have a moment of struggle, where we have a moment of opposition, whether the opposition is outward or inward, right? Where we have something that almost seems like it's defying us, or it's telling us or making us want to stray from the path of leading that life of responsibility and perfection, taking responsibility for ourselves, whether it's fear, whether it's delusion, whether it's simply we just don't want to, we feel it's too hard. We have to understand that anything that pulls us away from taking responsibility and trying to lead our lives as perfectly as we can, trying to fulfill our role as perfectly as possible, then that itself is delusion. God doesn't lay down when things get hard. God isn't defeated either. If we feel defeated, if we feel like we weren't able to do something properly or accomplish it, we are missing something. So it's a time for that self reflection to reassess the energies, to reassess everything we're bringing into that action, into whatever we're trying to do in our lives, to reassess and reevaluate where we're coming from. Are we in alignment? Are we disciplined within our bodies, within our emotions, within our minds to following this perfectly? A lot of people think just the physical action, right? Let's say you want to wash your dishes and you're saying, I'm going to fulfill this perfectly as possible. But they don't realize the whole time while they're washing the dishes might be perfect, they might be shining. But maybe your mental and emotional state is full of chaos. It's full of hate. It's saying, I don't want to do the dishes, or I'm better than this. I shouldn't be having to do the dishes. That fight within you is the fight that you must overcome. That is your opponent. That is your worthy opponent, worthy of your soul. Because anything that's hard for you, you have to understand that you use more strength, you draw more strength from God and from your spirit than when it's easy. If you want to develop your muscles in the gym, you're not going to lift just 5 pound weight every single time. You're going to start off with 5 pounds. And then when that becomes easy, you move on to 10 pounds. You increase the weight if you want to increase your abilities. Similarly, we need to bring more, draw out more of this strength, more of this manifest divinity into our lives. And in order to do that, we need a worthy opponent. We need something worthy of our divinity. We need something worthy of that strength. And it's only a good opponent, a hard opponent, that can bring out that strength in us. You don't get strong by taking the easy route. And when you do this properly, when you're able to fully assess, self-reflect, and use that courage and strength that you draw from experience, because life is the greatest teacher of all. And every moment, you don't need some, shining magical practice or exercise. Life is the practice. Life is the exercise. Life is the greatest spiritual practice there is. Life can be what you bring into each moment. We want something, you know, plated in gold and shining and obvious and, with a bunch of angels trumpeting around it saying, this is your, spiritual exercise. This is what you need to do to grow and evolve and become enlightened. We want it to appear to us like that. We have these high expectations that these things that we need to do in our life need to be coded in, glory themselves. And in reality, it's the mundane things, it's the little things, it's the things that we don't give a second look at, that usually are the ones that are the worthy opponents, that actually can draw more from us than those shining, glistening things. And as we raise in consciousness, as we become more aware, as more of this strength manifests into our lives, as well as this light being transmitted to us from an enlightened teacher, right? We gain this clarity and this awareness, and we're able to be in tune with our intuition. Our intuition is just being in tune with the spirit. Our intuition is the sensorial faculty, well, beyond sensorial, it's the sense of the soul. It's how the soul perceives life. And the soul perceives life as complete because the soul is complete. That's the nature of God, is that completion. It is happiness, it is self-effulgence. So the nature of the soul is the same. It is our connection to God. It is that divine presence. So if we're operating with our intuition, our intuition sees things as whole and complete. It does not perceive things from the partiality of the senses or the mind or the emotions. The minds, our thoughts, our emotions, our senses, they chop reality into little tiny bits. They segregate and categorize reality. So you never perceive everything altogether. You perceive things that make reality a very particular way. And so long as we see life as a very particular way, it's right when you're a little kid in kindergarten and you're learning the alphabet, you don't know what those symbols like A, B, C, D, you don't know what those letters mean yet. You don't know what those wiggly lines mean. In order to understand an A, right, you have to block out everything that an A is not. You are now in a partiality of reality. You are now perceiving one thing that's very distinct and concrete on its own. But in order to do that, in order to see an A like that, we have to recognize what an A is not as well. An A is not like this. An A is not something else. An A looks very specifically like this. That's how the mind works. That's how the human mind works. So in our lives, right, our experiences of life, what we do with our experiences, especially when we're very attached to them and we're not in tune with this divine presence, is we start to block out other possibilities within our own consciousness. We start to block out other things that can't exist if this exists. And this is something that is important for us to be able to do because that's how you have a mind. That's how you can function and operate as an individual, as a finite life form. Is you need a sense of self, right? If you want to know, hey, I got to eat food, I have to sleep, I have to use the bathroom. These kinds of things require a sense of self. But in the enlightened, the sense of self is so thin, it's so delicate, it's so fine that all that's really there is this self-effulgent divine light that emanates from them completely and all the time. And to be in that presence, even for a moment, can change you completely. It can dissolve all your old parameters of being and make available to you entirely new parameters, entirely new possibilities. It makes things available to you. It brings greater awareness and energy into your life. And you need more awareness in order to know how to live life in accordance with those divine principles and fundamentals, how to lead your life in accordance with more divine grace. So, this intuition, this divine presence speaks in silence, it speaks in stillness. It doesn't speak through thought or emotion because thought or emotions, right, they chop reality into little bits. They give you one perceptual tiny field of reality. It's very limited. And consciousness wants freedom. Consciousness in its state of happiness and prosperity requires freedom. It requires you to be in a free state of being, to be only reliant upon consciousness and consciousness alone. When you're in a low state of consciousness, you depend on everything and everyone. And when you're in a higher state of consciousness, you depend on no one. You are taken care of. Your happiness doesn't rely on anything or anyone. It is already there, no matter what happens in your life. So we can only feel this divine presence when we enter into states of complete and total stillness within. And this place of stillness increases with higher states of consciousness. Higher states of consciousness gives us command and control over the mind instead of the mind and our thoughts controlling us. So we're able to control the mind through higher states of awareness, through higher energy states. And the way we conduct and lead our lives in accordance with those divine principles, in accordance with that high Dharma, with that supreme reality, we bring more energy into our life. We bring more of that strength, that manifest divine into our lives. And as a result, that gives us even more clarity and stillness within our mind, which allows more of this divine energy to come through and take care of us, which brings us even in more connection with our intuition. From stillness, the characters of divine naturally come out. You don't need to force love. You don't need to force caring. You don't need to force any of the good qualities you could possibly associate with God and divinity, because these characters are inherent to divinity. So when we enter into that stillness within our own hearts and our own minds, These characters naturally come out through us. Our desires, our delusions naturally dissolve away. I mean, do you want the chocolate cake when you have something greater than a chocolate cake? No, the chocolate cake is a small thing now. It's insignificant. It's like taking a candle and putting it up against the sun. In the light of the sun, you can't even see the light of the candle anymore. That's what it's like being in that complete stillness, that completion of consciousness, that freedom, that enlightened condition of mind. From that stillness, in that light, everything smaller or less than vanishes. Nothing can exist or persist there. Your problems are gone, whether they're actually gone or not. In that moment, your problems are gone. Happiness stays, peace stays, love stays. There's no need for anything, there's no want, there's no lack, there's absolutely nothing but perfection. And in that moment, nothing needs to happen, nothing needs to be, nothing needs to be accomplished or done. So, to gain control over our lives, to gain control over our senses, over our desires, over our delusions, the greatest thing we have to do is find that stillness, conduct and lead our lives in a way that brings us into that stillness. And from that stillness, everything else comes through it. We are taken care of. We need to do nothing. So, if there's anything I want to leave with you today, is unlike this idea that's going around amongst the spiritual community nowadays, which I feel is very unfortunate, that you don't need an enlightened teacher. Enlightenment is within you. You don't need a teacher. You don't need someone to help support you, to raise your consciousness, to point out the pitfalls on the path. I feel like that's a very unfortunate message that people are spreading around, because it's very difficult to see past delusion when your whole life is a delusion. It's very difficult to understand the true nature of that presence until you actually connect to that presence. It's a very slow and arduous path to do it on your own. We see the placebo effect has, a certain amount of power in our lives, and there's a reason. Our minds can truly persuade us of anything. So, how can we really trust and rely on ourselves if it was true that an enlightened teacher wasn't necessary to become enlightened yourself, or at least a very vital part? Maybe it's possible without, but it's a much more difficult path. If that was truly the case, that you really don't need anyone and it's far easier without, then everybody who didn't have an enlightened teacher would be enlightened, because you don't need one. You're fully competent on your own. Everybody who doesn't have an enlightened teacher should all be enlightened, or a vast majority of them anyway, if it's that easy. Use common sense. Higher consciousness comes with a great amount of common sense and practicality, because it excludes desire and delusion. It yields practical thinking and practical outcomes in our lives. And if there's anything from all the science we've done is show you the practical outcome of connecting with someone who has that enlightened consciousness, who has that connection to the divine and is able to connect you to that presence as well. If there's anything that shows it, right, we see the impact of the invisible on the visible all around us through all of our 6,000 scientific studies and our 670 peer reviewed publications. It's authentic, it's real. And eventually, you can go to a point on the path where you don't even need a teacher anymore. When you become enlightened yourself, you are independent now. You don't need anything or anyone outside of yourself. But until then, it really works to have some help, right? We want to learn anything in life. We get sources of knowledge from places outside of ourselves. If we want to learn how to be a CPA, if we want to learn how to, become a lawyer and everything, everybody relies on somebody outside of themselves. Everybody uses the internet, which where do you think that knowledge comes from? You think it just creates itself? It comes from other people. It comes from connecting with somebody who knows more, who's done the work before you have, who's gained the wisdom and the clarity and the power of the experience itself. I don't want to gain wisdom and knowledge from my own state of consciousness. It's already available to me right now. I want somebody who can perceive life from a higher dimension than whatever I can possibly even imagine. I want to start from there. I want those advantages. I am spiritually selfish. I want to take advantage of whatever I can, whatever's available to me. I want to gain as much wisdom and love within my own heart. I've heard many of you say, it's not possible for me this lifetime. I'm too old, or I'm too low in consciousness, or I'm too far gone, or it's just too hard. And that's very unfortunate as well, because ultimately, though you might not be able to take your finances with you, you might not be able to take your family or your relationships or your successes with you. What do you take with you? Your consciousness. However, you've led your life up until now and continue to do so until the day you leave this planet affects your consciousness. And whatever your consciousness, the sum total of that consciousness, the sum total that is you, whatever is within your heart, when you die, that carries forward. And in that bardo of existence, in that limbo, up until the point where you get another rebirth or you continue on somewhere else, if you think that that place of existence is sympathetic, is going to have mercy on you, think again. Whatever's here within your consciousness, within your heart, there is no sympathy for what you're going to carry into your next lifetime. Whatever you carry forward, that's it. So even if you're maybe 80, 90, 100 years old, I don't care how far gone you think you are, or how far lost you are, or how much life you think you have left in you, or whatever you think you're capable of, why not do the best you can right now, knowing that. Knowing that death is not a reset, like what I've heard some people say, that death is a reset. You could start again, try things new. No, that's not the case. Whatever you die with, you carry with you. It continues. The confusion, the lower planes of consciousness, those states of mind, all of those things, the sum total, the aggregate selves that you are now, they continue forward. But also know that they are in your power to dissolve and to control. Right here, right now. And it doesn't take a lifetime. Even a year is enough time to make dramatic shifts in your consciousness and your awareness and your happiness. If you lead your life with discipline, you try and follow these divine principles and fundamentals, the higher Dharma, and direct your life in the direction that brings greater prosperity and peace and love into your heart, right? It will naturally come through you, depending on the decision and the choices, the behaviors, the emotions, the states of mind that you engage with. When you enter into higher states of consciousness, you suddenly start to be aware of choice. Suddenly you can step back from your thoughts and your emotions and decide, am I going to continue down this path from this state of mind, from this emotion, or I'm going to try something different, something that brings greater peace and love and energy into my life, that calls upon my strength instead of my weakness in this moment? What am I going to pull forth into my reality right now? And then you choose to do that and you put in the work, knowing that this divine energy, right, as so long as you are following those divine principles, it will support you. It will take care of you. It will come forward. It will come forward before you. It will take care of you, prepare the way. It'll govern your life in your totality. Even if the circumstance doesn't turn out the way you expected to, it might turn out better. Maybe it wasn't what divine wanted for you in that moment because there's something better for you later. If you get the job now, maybe there's a better job for you in 2 months from now. But you freak out and you panic because you didn't get the job today. Maybe there's one 2 months from now that's more aligned with your destiny, with your life purpose, one that's more satisfying to your soul, one that has maybe a greater income, a higher salary. You don't know what it could be. So to rely on expectation and what we think is good, what we think is right, instead of what we think divine would want for us, what we see is right in accordance with the divine truths of life. The impartiality that divine, everybody is worthy. Everybody must be taken care of. Everybody must be loved. To act without selfishness or judgment. All of these things promote our connection with our divinity within. Every moment is a reminder for us to connect, for us to discipline our lives and our minds and our emotions, and to choose a path or an emotion or a state of mind that is in alignment with the high, lofty goal of being divinely guided instead of ego driven. And you'll see the outcome. If you're not seeing the outcome, reassess, self-reflect, see what you're missing, see what you're not doing. Look at the ways and aspects of life in which you are losing energy, where you are depleting yourself, where you're falling into old habits and behaviors. And look at the parts and aspects of life, the things in life that bring you greater joy and peace. Real joy, not that excitement that has satiation, but the joy that is everlasting and comes from calmness, peace, but is still a high, high elation, an ecstatic place of being, one that shows you beauty, that makes you forget about yourself, that connects you to something bigger than yourself. Look at those moments and those parts of your life that connect you with those moments and engage with those things. Engage with those parts of life. Do something different. Change the monotony, change the routine. Maybe the routine's no longer helping you. Maybe the routine is just perpetuating your current identity, your current form, your current parameters of consciousness. Maybe you need to change up your routine. Do something different every day. Lead a new life. Go out in the world. Find new people. Attempt something new. And it's only when you follow these divine principles and fundamentals, when you address things at the level of consciousness, that you can really reap the wonderful benefits of meditation. Because when the mind is finally under your control, when you're interacting with life in a way that perpetuates and brings stillness within you, you're not living with regret or feeling shame or humiliation, or you're not living in a place of feeling inferior or like you haven't done enough, you haven't taken responsibility for something. You still have 100 different bills you need to pay, and you haven't paid them yet, right? A bunch of different parts and ways of your life that you're losing energy and you don't even realize it. And it's affecting your state of mind, because lower energy states, more thoughts. Because thoughts inhibit that flow of consciousness. They naturally bring you down energetically. So if we take responsibility and we do the things that we need to do as perfectly as we can do them, right? Clean your house, keep everything in order, clean up your life, clean up your finances, clean up your relationships. If there's a relationship that maybe they're a good person, but you keep dropping in energy when you're with that person, maybe you need to reevaluate that relationship. Maybe spend less time with them. Maybe not get rid of them altogether, but maybe you need to spend less time if you can't control how you interact with them. Because all of these things, nobody can affect your own consciousness except for you. We like to blame others and situations and things outside of ourselves, but really the only thing that can affect our own consciousness is our own self, our own ways that we lead and engage with life, that we, the emotions we're not able to control, the thoughts we're not able to focus on and divert. The lower parts of our being that we engage with and give more power to. When we start to tighten up our life, we find our minds start to go into a point of quiescence. It becomes silent, it becomes quiet. When our emotions aren't in turmoil, then it's easier to maintain the quietness of the mind. And as a result, when you actually sit down and do meditate, then something might actually happen. You can actually go into high states of divine awareness. You can experience ecstasy and bliss. You can experience trance-like states, samadhi. And each time you go into a samadhi, a trance-like state, part of you dissolves and you bring more God into this world. There is more of that divine embodiment where there is more of this power that you're able to create and store and utilize to even create more success, more happiness, or simply to bring more of God into your life, to connect more to God, to have more of that bliss. Because God is not an informal, God is not a sterile concept. God is not in a petri dish to be evaluated and examined. God is like this, God is like that. God is love, God is peace, God is joy. No, God is feeling. God is love here, not here. And the more God is love here, the more of that grace can perform miracles in your life. You start to feel God is joy, incomprehensible joy. So I don't know why anybody would never want to go out and look for that joy. Would you want success if it didn't have joy in it? Would you want a relationship if it didn't have joy in it? Would you want anything in your life? A new car, a new house, children? Would you want anything if there was no joy in it? Our own soul is telling us what we want. We want this joy. Whether we're conscious of it or not, even our unconscious mind seeks it. And finding God, self realization, enlightenment is the greatest completion, the greatest joy, the greatest happiness, the greatest fulfilled desire you could ever have or want or need. And it makes every moment of pain, every tear that has been shed, everything you've ever had to struggle and fight for, all of it is worth it. Even to just go into samadhi for a moment. Suddenly it's all worth it. If that's all that you get, it's worth it. So, what I want to leave all of you with today is I'm going to show you a way you can meditate. Find that stillness within you and connect to it. To focus and discipline the mind and then let go. But true meditation only happens when the mind has reached stillness, when the thoughts actually stop. That is when meditation begins. Without the stoppage of thought, you are simply sitting down and performing a ritual, a dogma, a practice. It is strictly a technique until you're able to actually reach that state of silence within the mind. And everything I explained to you today is to help you reach that point of silence, to help dissolve the attachments that create thought, to dissolve that part of your being that perpetuates desire and thought, and instead to bring you to a place of stillness where meditation comes naturally. The more you're able to focus and discipline yourself in your life, the easier letting go during meditation, the easier it is to let go during meditation. So, the point of meditation is to not be aware of your thoughts, right? To still the mind, to bring your awareness within, to divert your awareness from your senses. You don't want to be aware of the world around you. You don't want to be aware if you're in a noisy room. You want to be in a quiet room. You want to withdraw from the senses and bring awareness to source, to the source within you, the source of awareness, which is that still place. It's a place the mind can't go because it supersedes the mind, it precedes it altogether. It is that source of our intuition, it is the nature of our reality. That is pure consciousness, pure awareness beyond thought and emotion. So we need to withdraw from those aspects. It's like diverting our awareness from the outside to the inside, focusing on divine, focusing on whatever brings divine closest to our heart. I like to say, if you want to focus on divine as love, whatever brings you the greatest source of love in your life, whether it be a person, an animal, I really don't care what you love more than anything else in this world. Maybe you already have love for God. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't have any love for God, but you have love for something, I'm sure. Whatever that thing is, preferably if it's not a thing. Like, I don't feel like you can love your car that deeply, but I feel like you can love another human deeply. Or maybe a moment, maybe you felt samadhi, you felt you had a divine experience in this love that wasn't really connected to anything or anyone, but you felt this love. So connect to that love again. Go back into your memories and feel that experience one more time. If it's a person, remember the love you feel for that person, and then forget about the person and just feel the love. And know that every source of love all comes from divine, that the love you're feeling is actually the love for God, from God and for God. So you can either focus on that love, and wherever you feel that love, a lot of the time you feel that love inherently right here. So focus on that feeling here. It's a very sometimes physical feeling. It's like almost like it's in your chest. Just feel that feeling of love, this presence right here. And I like to play music when I meditate because it helps focus the mind initially. But you don't want to listen to music the whole time. So you focus on a part of the song. You focus on, maybe the drums, maybe the bass, or maybe the melody, whatever is easier for you to focus on, right? Some people like to focus on the third eye, which is between the eyebrows and an inch above, right? Whatever comes naturally and easier to you, do that. I'm a big supporter of you don't follow anything I say, just follow whatever has the greatest outcome for you, whatever you feel the greatest difference. You can follow what I'm saying, you could do something different. As long as you're able to reach that stillness, that's all that matters. And when you're able to engage with your love for God, that love actually enables you to go beyond thought. There's something that happens when you connect with that love where naturally you're not in your thinking mind anymore, but you're in pure feeling of awareness. So for me, it's easier having this love when you start off with the meditation. I feel like when you start off with love, you're halfway there. But again, whatever works for you, as long as it works. And then you'll listen, focus with the music. And then the moment the music has stopped, you're not focusing anymore. You're not feeling the love. You let go of the love too. Excuse me. All that love. So you stop focusing. You let go of everything. You just let go. You listen to the silence. And that's it. And then whenever you feel the meditation is done for you, you can stop. No time limit, just whatever you want to do. And consistency is more important than length. To remind yourself constantly, every moment of every day, that this presence is here, and to tune yourself with it so that you can be more responsible and engaged and active in your life. And to connect with this in every moment, in every action and choice you make. I feel like it's vital to always remind yourself of it. Consistency is far more important than length. So do it as frequently as you want. You don't need to sit down for hours and hours on end, as long as maybe once a day, maybe twice a day, morning, evening, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Some people like to do an hour. I'll sometimes sit for a couple hours doing it. Why? Because it comes naturally and I want to. Because I feel the grace in those moments. You could do it as however long that you want to.